Hello and welcome to the Recursion Cafe, where we play games from the discard pile. In today's game of Unmatched, we have BOberyn on the left and Kjet on the right. BOberyn is playing Moon Knight, one of my favourite characters. He's a solo melee fighter with 3 movement and 16 health, and every turn he will change to a different version of his identity. So Moon Knight gets extra movement at the start of the turn, Khonshu gets to hit very hard and does not take effect damage, and Mr. Knight adds +1 to all of his defense values, so he's a little bit more tanky, and the opponent has to kind of read and adapt to that. Kjet is playing Muldoon, a 3-move ranged fighter with 3 InGen workers and 14 health. At the start of his turn, he can place a trap, and the traps stop movement, do a damage, and let Muldoon draw a card. So already this is a pretty tough matchup for Moon Knight, being a solo melee fighter with no kind of damage that goes through sidekicks, meaning that he's going to have to kill all of the sidekicks manually or use one of his effect damage cards. So he'll start off with That's the Part I Like. Kjet didn't defend it, which means BOberyn gets to look at the top 3 cards of his deck and discard 1 and put the rest back in any order. That's already a pretty good start. And Moon Knight likes to be aggressive anyway, so perhaps the strategy here is just kind of put pressure on Kjet. And since, you know, every fighter that has sidekicks, their consistency is just a little bit worse because they draw sidekick cards when they don't want to, or hero cards when they don't want to. But it looks like BOberyn has backed off here and will just hang out in the middle of the map to threaten being able to get anywhere. And Kjet plays Remote Detonation for no effect, and I think this is a kind of a telling move, committing to the what I would call competitive line of play, which is just playing for exhaustion, which is decent against Moon Knight because he's not great into exhaustion, and so that scheme functions just as a pass, meaning that Kjet doesn't have to draw a card, which works reasonably well. There is a boost in by BOberyn to strike at one of the workers, and no, instead he just takes a step back. But that's 2 of the draw cards gone in Moon Knight's deck. He's discarded both of the 1 versatile. Here is a leap away into a Fist of Khonshu, and Moon Knight is not Mr. Knight, therefore 1 damage will go through, and his Fist of Khonshu will not trigger. The leap away forces Moon Knight to back to the center of the map, away from the little cordon that Muldoon has set up. So far no traps have been placed, but they might work against Kjet's strategy in the long term because they force a card draw out of Muldoon, and that's really not what he wants to be doing. So Moon Knight will walk up to one of the workers and wall at them, and it's a past and present intermingle, which typically as Moon Knight you want to play with a big boost card in your discard pile as Khonshu ideally, but in this regard I think the highest defenses the workers have is a 3 or a 4, and he just wants to get one out of the way, so striking with a 4 is usually, I think it might even have been a 3, is just good enough, to be honest. Chewing through all these sidekicks can be very annoying, but I think BOberyn just needs to keep it up because Muldoon eventually at some point will run out of his 9 sidekick tokens. So here's a feint into a good enough for us, meaning that BOberyn does not have the option to draw 2 cards, but that's fine. I don't think he particularly wanted to. He's got plenty of cards in hand, and he knows that Kjet is going for the exhaustion game, meaning that he doesn't want to overdraw from anything. It looks like Muldoon plays the trap that Moon Knight walked into, which we couldn't see because of his massive wingspan. So he took a damage there, forced the card draw of Kjet, but wasn't able to close with Muldoon, which I think was the goal. Here's a second shot into a 4 value. We're all in this together. So 2 into 4 right now, and Kjet will boost with a They Should All Be Destroyed, bringing it to 1 damage over. Ironically, it does the 1 damage, which is great, and but it doesn't allow Moon Knight to draw, which might have been what Kjet wanted. So perhaps Kjet just had too many cards in hand and wanted to put some damage in and didn't mind about the card draw, because ultimately it's damage either way, functionally the same thing. So Kjet will kind of count spaces in between and then call for backup, bringing back 2 of his defeated workers, and I believe just declining the second one. So he will place up to some number of traps and just not place any, meaning that there are less options for him being forced to draw, and he doesn't have to draw 2 cards, which is the other option on that card. So all of his workers are back, meaning, he functions kind of like a Wukong in this matchup in a sense, because he just has a whole army of dudes to place the other person has to get through. So here's the Travelers of the Night, which is interesting because it doesn't actually get him to Muldoon, it just gets him to another worker. But I think at this point, BOberyn is just wading in and trying to slap some workers around. And we'll see what Kjet does. Does he defend it? It really does depend on the cards in his hand. Ideally, he'd want them to survive, but if it's a big hit, it would be unfortunate. That's why I always win into a feint. That's ideal for BOberyn. So it's just the 1 damage through. The cancel doesn't really matter. And now he's Khonshu, which is probably pretty scary for Muldoon, who so far hasn't been touched by Moon Knight and will want to get away probably. So here is an attack from someone, and it's a leap away into a feint. So great for BOberyn in a sense. He cancels to move away, but he does take 2 damage in response. And of course, Kjet will just maneuver away and bracket himself. So Khonshu can walk up and kill a worker probably, but it's not where he wants the damage to go. But again, Kjet's playing this really well and just forcing him to keep whiffing or attacking at targets that he doesn't really mind. So here is another, that's the part I like. So BOberyn gets another scout of what's on top of Kjet's deck and gets to discard something, and it's a rending shot, which can be very annoying because it just moves you away from Muldoon. So Muldoon will place a trap where that worker was. That's the second trap I think this game. It's a shoot her into a past and present intermingle, and combined with Mr. Knight's bonus and the 2 boost in the discard, that is a full block of the straight up 5 that Muldoon shot at him with. Here is another attack. Second action, being Mr. Knight and having access to those kinds of defenses is very good. And there it is again, they should all be destroyed. He's next to 1 trap, which is a 5 value, but a 2 plus a 2 plus a 1 from Mr. Knight is again enough to full block that. So really well managed defense from BOberyn there, who will then decide to back away. I think, especially with the placement there, walking to the trap and then hitting Muldoon might have been good, but of course he might not have had enough defenses in hand, so it might have been difficult for him. So there is a madness will keep you alive. I believe he hasn't moved, so he's taking the pass as it were, just to recover 2 health and put a 3 boost into his discard pile, which might be relevant. We will see. So he is now Khonshu. And again, both Khonshu and Moon Knight kind of get a free movement pass into the traps, so that could have been useful. Here is a rending shot into a war on this together, which means BOberyn has to draw a card and then gets moved across the map. And then Kjet will just take another draw and leave it there. He's in a really good position and can't really be approached in any reasonable fashion by Moon Knight. I guess a boost up the middle and then a Travelers of the Night could work, but that's a lot of cards to commit for 1 attack potentially. So here's a feint undefended into a worker, so that's another worker down. All 3 are gone, but another call for backup is still somewhere in Kjet's hand or deck, and so Moon Knight might have another army to chew through before the game is done. The cards just placed on the table were our signature individualized cards for determining kind of what matchups were happening in the tournament. They were very, very cool, so big shout out to the organizers there. There is a Travelers of the Night and a hit. Unfortunately, he is Mr. Knight and not Khonshu, but you do what you can. It's a 4 into a 4. I've hunted most things that can hunt you, which means Muldoon gets to just run, and BOberyn could change his identity if he wants to, and he does, and then he'll become Khonshu again and sit in the middle of the map, but hopefully he can reach Muldoon. Both players do a quick deck count there. I think Kjet is up, and so first action, Muldoon will take a shot, and it's a rending shot into a good enough for us. So BOberyn has the ability to take no damage and draw 2 cards as Khonshu. I'm not sure whether he wants to at this point, especially after the deck count, but yeah, it looks like he declines, and Muldoon will just take a step away. So here's the maneuver. Will he boost? He doesn't have a 3 boost in hand, it looks like, because he's 3 spaces away, and will just become Mr. Knight again. So Moon Knight being quite passive here, and Muldoon is still on full health. That might change. It's a rending shot into a totally same thing to do, which means that both players could take 2 damage if Moon Knight so chooses, and it looks like that is what is happening. So there you go, and then rending shot will push Moon Knight back away again. It turns out InGen has a lot of movement effects, and we haven't even seen them all yet, but it makes sense with all of the traps and how they like to operate as a unit. It looks like we have another remote detonation, and again, just another pass. I believe there are 3 in the deck for InGen, so they just get to have 3 free turns of doing nothing and not drawing cards. And of course, Muldoon will dance away just out of range. Although Moon Knight does have his hop ability, but he might not be using it there. I think in real life, this game had passed the 35-minute mark and both players were still on double-digit health, and I was wondering what the hell was going on. But this is apparently what's going on. So Muldoon's turn was playing remote detonation straight into call for backup, bringing 3 more workers, in for Moon Knight to try and beat up. And at this point, I'm slightly doubtful as to whether BOberyn has enough attack cards to actually go through the workers and kill Muldoon, but I suppose we will find out. So here is Moon Knight into a worker, and it's an I'm Not Real, which means he can swap into Mr. Knight and then we'll go and change back into Moon Knight. Perhaps he wants to get... Well, I suppose being Moon Knight is great in terms of chasing, and then he can pop into Khonshu, which is good for the offense. Yeah, skipping Mr. Knight seems to be the right call there. So here is an attack from InGen, and it's a regroup into a totally same thing to do. So Kjet will get a card draw, which is maybe not what he wants, but looking at the deck count, he has a deck and his opponent does not, so that seems fine. It looks like Kjet takes 2 damage here, but BOberyn does not. It might have been just a misplay. I might have not misunderstood the board state, but it just looks like that wasn't quite resolved correctly. It looks like Moon Knight is indeed out of deck, so he will start taking damage from exhaustion, and then he will attack a worker because he has no choice because he cannot reach Muldoon. It's a feint into a tactical advance. No damage done, unfortunately, which means the worker stays alive, and it does mean the InGen workers can't move away, but at this point that's all they're doing, so they have plenty of time. And here's an attack. First action, it could be a shoot her or a second shot or something. It could be another regroup, although again at this point Kjet doesn't really want to draw. And it's a second shot into a Fist of Khonshu. So it is a 2 into a 3, which means Kjet can reasonably comfortably boost into it. He does not, and he just lets it be. And then maneuvers inwards to surround Moon Knight in a way, which is interesting. So BOberyn is still on double-digit health, but he has no deck, which means this is just quite painful. He does double maneuver as Khonshu, which means he takes no damage, which is pretty awesome. This worker walks up and hits Mr. Knight with a tactical advance, and I think BOberyn has to just kind of keep all of his cards for offense because he has to just chew through a lot of health, right? And he can't afford the defense. So he does take 2 damage there and will hit the worker. Looks like 2 to 3 cards in hand for BOberyn. It's an I'm Not Real, skipping Moon Knight and going back into Khonshu. Really nice move there to try and avoid exhaustion damage. Kjet continues to draw and will look at his options for boosting. He will boost the worker in and then attack. And BOberyn probably has to take this. He's trying to outweight InGen, but it's going to be tough. It's a leap away into a totally same thing to do, meaning that BOberyn takes 2 damage and can take no damage to kill the worker, which seems pretty reasonable. It was kind of actionless kill there, but BOberyn is running low on attack, and I think Kjet just has too much health remaining. Kjet hasn't actually taken a proper attack yet, or any damage from a proper attack yet, and that's pretty rough for Moon Knight. And there is the concession from BOberyn. He only has 1 card left, and it's an attack card, and Kjet still has plenty of defense, and he's only just run out of workers. So there it is, that's game. Both really cool, really lovely players, and they kindly played for the camera, so that was awesome. Yeah, really, really tough matchup, just kind of generally for Moon Knight, and especially at a competitive event where players are much more likely to play towards exhaustion. It's just pretty difficult. I think if I were to play Moon Knight, I would probably just run in and try and, just keep hitting, because Moon Knight has some amount of draw, but he can just put pressure on Muldoon, and Muldoon at some point will run out of men and defenses. The problem is that, he has functionally 9 workers, so Moon Knight has to expend about 9 cards to get there, and then start hitting Muldoon. So it's very, very tight. But I think with all of the passes that Muldoon has, Moon Knight just can't out-exhaust him. So there it is. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, you can check out the links in the description below. Until next time, take care.